Welcome our first newsmaker to the stage, Carlos Slim. Ingeniero, if you would join us. Thank you very much. Have a seat.
Yes.
Congratulations on your presidential award that we heard about a moment ago. And thank you very much for coming back to be with the GW family. We're very grateful for your time.
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you in this global forum from the GW Global Forum.
Well, we'll range over a number of things, and we'll take some questions from our audience today with you. But since I know, among many things about you, that you are a big, and since we're in New York, that you are a big New York Yankees fan.
Yes.
What happened to the Yankees this year?
It's a good question. Well, they cannot win every year.
But you were rooting for them.
No, I like them from since I was a child with the history of Baby Ruth, and Joe DiMaggio was playing, and they came Mickey Mantle, and all the history of the team is very interesting since Baby Ruth get in the team.
You have a favorite Yankee? Is Babe Ruth your favorite Yankee?
Well, I think Baby Ruth and Lou Gehrig.
Okay. And prospects for next year, since you're a numbers guy and you...
Well, Mariano Rivera. It's not a prospect, but it's...
Okay. Let's start talking a little bit about the world from your perspective as the world's leading businessman. With your great success, your propensity to pick winners and to do the numbers. As you look at the global economy today, as you look at the opportunities and the challenges, what do you see?
Well, I think it's very clear now for everyone that we are living a new society, a new civilization. Technology has made changes since the beginning of the human beings. And the technology has done two very big changes. First with the steam engine, and then with the electricity and the internal combustion engine. And now with the telecommunications and the computers and all this, the internet and all these technology advances. And we're living a new society where producing goods is so easy and so cheap and so fast. And we move from an agricultural society to an industrial society, and now we are living a service society that was a technological society. Most of the population is living from services. And I think the problem we are living is because the governments don't understand very well, and they are not driving the change.
They're not driving the change.
They are not driving the change.
What should they be driving?
The change from one kind of civilization to the other with new paradigms.
How should they be doing that?
First, understand what is happening. And second, make the changes that it needs to be done.
You don't think governments even understand what's happening?
No. Well, China is doing the right job. I think that China is really driving the change outstanding. And it was first the drive from the agricultural society to industrial society. It was in the developed countries in the 19th century. In the 19th century, in US and everywhere, 70 or 80% of the population was rural and agricultural or primary producers. And they moved for the industrial society. And now the country that is doing the change is China, moving from a auto-consumption society, rural society, to a post-modern industrial society, but with the knowledge and creating the human capital that is necessary and the technology.
But they can do that, can't they? Because they're also an autocratic society. If they want to create a new town or a new dam or anything, they can just move people out and do what they need to do. They don't have to worry about democratic processes and lawsuits. And
I think it's not a problem of democracy. There is clearly a different paradigm I was telling, and the agricultural society has a monolithic power, all of them. The people in charge came from divinity. The Egyptian pharaoh, the emperor of Japan, just after the war, he was coming from the divinity until MacArthur said, don't tell that you are not coming from the divinity. The Western world also was done by the Pope, and all came from divinity. The Tlatoani from Aztec and the Inca, they come all and put together the religious, political, economic, and military power together. And now this society, you need to have democracy, freedom, diversity, plurality. That's the big change. That now we need all this because we need innovation, creativity, globalization, technology, competence.
Let me pursue that with you for a moment.
Mobility, social mobility. In the past, there were not social mobility. And you are talking about India, Egypt, the East, the West, America, every place.
But I'm interested in your thoughts on this a little bit more. So we have two countries here, Mexico, which is where you live and where you're from, and the United States, where we are now and where you also invest. One's a developed country, the United States, with huge problems now, and we'll be talking some more about those a little bit more. Mexico is a developing country. So if the countries were to get it and to move to this new paradigm, two different types, two different models, let's start with what would the United States be doing?
Well, the problem of developed countries is worse because they are so involved in the last society that they have a lot of problems to change. And if you look, this crisis of 2008, this is the same one of 2001. There is not a difference. It's the same one. And in both, you have a government bankrupt, a government with big fiscal deficit, a chronicle and a structural fiscal deficit, and a chronicle and a structural trade deficit. And the problems that you have, you are not solving the problems. And you are getting to a time where using the most aggressive monetary and fiscal policy are not enough. And it's the only solution and the only medicine you are giving. And that's also only a temporary and artificial medicine that you are giving. No, the problem has been not solved. But that's the U.S., but that's also Europe.
Right.
You look France, the problem of France. That means that the state trying to give universal welfare to the society is getting bankrupt. No, it's getting, all the governments are in this situation. And you look countries that the incidence of taxes are already so big, let's say more than 40%, that they have fiscal deficits of 10 or 12, because they are trying to give welfare to the society that is not possible. Let's say France, they are moving from 60 to 60 years, 62 years, and they have terrible problems to make a change. But they need to go to 75. They are not needing 62.
You'd shut the country down for years if you tried
Yes,
that.
because the people now is living 85 years, and maybe the people in 10 years will live 90 or 95 years. And you need to sustain retired 30 years, people that used to the life expectancy was 65 years or less than that when the conditions were put.
Okay,
but also you can see U.S., going to U.S., you have the big problem of retire and the benefits, but the health is now 18% of the gross national product and going to 20 without universal service. You need to make all these corrections. And how you can do that? Looking for the private sector and the civil society. Less government and more civil society worldwide. Because when the new paradigms are competition, globalization, innovation, environment, and all these kind of things, technology, you need to go to the society because the government has not this possibility of flexibility and competence and competitive and everything.
You've met with President Obama and been to the White House and all. If he called you and said...
No, in the White House.
Okay. But if he called you and he said, Carlos, what should I do?
If he would do that, you are, that's
what would you tell him?
First, to look and understand what is happening, and then look how to drive the change.
But what should he change? What should he do?
You need to change it. Well, for the fiscal deficit, you only can increase income, revenues, get down cost, or sell assets. The government needs to sell assets. The governments need to get out of so many things that they are involved, and they need to sell assets and leave all these alternatives to the private sector.
You've also been very concerned about the banking sector.
Who is very concerned?
Sorry?
Who was very concerned? Me?
You have been concerned.
No, I am not.
You're not concerned about that?
No, the banking sector is not a problem because, well, it was excess of excesses.
I've read that you were concerned about the bank.
No, the excesses they have. I don't know where you read that, but I am not very concerned. No, because when you have a bank, the business of the bank, the cost of the bank is money, and then they let the money. When you don't have cost of your raw materials, you make a big business. That means that now, when you don't have cost for money, you only put that in some very secure, and you have a big differential. And when you have big spreads, that's a problem of 3 or 5 years to go. That's why they are getting back. The problem of the government to bail out some banks will be not a danger, will be temporary financing because the money will be paid out, and now it's being paid out because when they have zero cost, and they are making great business.
Is the United States a good place to invest?
Where?
Well, that's my question to you.
I think that the United States has something that gives the leadership and will follow giving the leadership until they fail to have that, is the technology leadership. What makes United States so strong is leadership in technology. Is Apple, is Google, is Twitter, is Facebook, is I don't know which names, whatever. All this technology development is Silicon Valley that is doing the change, and as much as you maintain this leadership, but United States is losing leadership in many activities. Let's say in Lucent was the great company of technology, and they make it they near finish it, and the activities of United States outside United States is mainly in traditional business, is not accepting the Silicon Valley in technology and other issues. But I think investing in U.S. is always, you cannot say that this, my father used to say, there are not bad times for people that know how to do and have the means to do that.
Mm-hmm. Let me
and there are no times and there are no places.
But you have over time invested in the United States, whether it's
not too much.
Some. You have a piece of the New York Times now, for example.
No, we have a very small piece, but we have a credit, convertible credit with warrants. I explained myself. Mm-hmm. It's like a bond, like a credit. It's a credit with warrants.
And why the New York Times for you?
Anyway, well, it was a good. We make hundreds of operations like this every month or every year. That's one more. It's interesting rates, interesting perspective, interesting warrants.
One of the questions I get asked a lot, and of course,
if it were Wall Street, we will do also. Financial Times, we will do also.
Okay. One of the questions I get a lot, I'm curious as to.
But anyway, I think that is the best brand and the best newspaper.
That's what I wanted to ask you. People ask, will there be a New York Times? Will there be a print newspaper? As someone who, what is it, 17% or so that you've got in this?
Oh, we have a warrant.
You're right.
Options.
Options. I got it. Will there be, do you think, in your view, a newspaper that we will hold called the New York Times?
No, New York Times is also one of the most advanced in electronic meanings. And I think it's newspaper. That means paper and news. News is the content. And as much as they can drive the content through to the modern means, to the electronic, to the new ways of manage that, I think will be very successful. If they cannot make the movement from paper to modernity, anyone will have problems.
Let's talk about modernity now and bring the conversation back to your country, to Mexico, and to developing countries, and what you are trying to do, both as a businessman and as a philanthropist there and around the world. You talked about governments getting it, to get the new paradigm. In a developing country such as Mexico, what is the path to further development and prosperity, in your view?
I still think the same. The investment is in the private sector. They are more efficient, and they have the savings. The government regularly, when they increase taxes and they increase revenues, is more politically more profitable to make expenses, social or any kind of expenses, than investments. They have other focus. And as much as they go for current expenses, they get in trouble. They offer more, they offer lower age of retirement, they offer this, and they compromise for the future or the other thing. I think that the solution is more civil society, private sector for investment sector, the businessman, and the society for solving problems of environment, human rights, get involved in health and education, in human capital.
What do you think is the main social impediment to more growth and more private sector activity in Mexico?
Can I tell it really?
Yes, please.
In part, the consensus of Washington.
Of Washington?
Yes, the consensus of Washington, the economic consensus of Washington that was in '84, was a way to collect the debt crisis. You remember the external crisis of '82, the debt crisis?
Well, yes.
Well, it was because it was an excess of the government, big fiscal deficits, like today you have, and a big debt of our government. But then in '82, '81, if you remember, in '81, the interest rate went to 21. You remember, prime rates went to 21. So everyone went bankrupt. And then we have these big debts in our countries. They came the consensus of Washington. That was very good in many ways, because they talk about privatizations, they talk about this and the other. But they also have some procyclical reasons. And they confuse in the consensus and in our technocrats that they have a confusion between tools and objectives. They think that the tools were objectives. They think that if they have macroeconomic stability, things will get along. And that's only tools. You need to have good macroeconomics, good health government fiscal accounts, but it's not enough. It's a tool to arrive to development. It's not the development himself. If you have low inflation and you have open markets and you can have all what globalization, everything about this, but you need to have this like a tool, not like a end.
What some have said is that Mexico is too highly centralized, too monopolistic. Some have even tied you to that, and that they believe that has gotten in the way of
I think you need to make a differentiation between what you read and the facts.
That's why you're here.
Thank you. Well, they say we are monopolistic. In '87, Telmex was monopolistic. Actually, I used to have only 3% of Telmex, and they say that was my everything. I have 3.2% of Telmex. When it was privatized, 10% was from Southwestern Bell and 5% from France Telecom. And it was in the market already when we bought it in '91. And we pay like 18% more than the market price. It was only for 6 years monopolistic in long distance. And it was open in August of '96, and in January '97, there were competition. And our competition was the biggest long distance company in the world, that was AT&T in this time, before they go to, and MCI WorldCom, that before they go to Chapter 11. That were the competitors, another 6 or 8 long-distance companies, but we compete with the biggest of the world on those times in '97. And what companies has been competing with us in Mexico? It has been AT&T, MCI WorldCom, Telefónica, Verizon, and Vodafone. If that's monopoly, I don't understand what is competition.
Well, what do you think it would take, looking at your country and looking at where it is on the development curve now, to explode business, to explode entrepreneurship?
The government getting out of many activities.
Too highly centralized,
More
too
public-private investment. I think that, but it's not only Mexico. I think that's what should be done everywhere, that the government don't take so many activities and sell so many assets. And in our country, let's say, I don't want to talk about oil and power that are very important, because the law forbidden that. But supposing that you don't get out of this, we have water supply, water treatment. We need to make a lot of investment in infrastructure. We have done a company to do that. And you need to do highways, airports, ports, all infrastructure you want to see.
May I ask you somewhat personal question?
You can ask me impersonal and personal questions.
Okay. In the Forbes list, you are now the wealthiest person in the world. When you started out as a young person, when you started amassing your businesses, did you set as a goal for yourself, I want to be that most successful businessman in the world?
No, I think a businessman like painters or artists or doctors, they get involved in his activities and don't worry about. It's not a football game. It's you are doing what you think you should do and you like to do, and you work in the activity like a newsman or like a painter in what you are interested. I am not concerned about what it say and if it is true or it is not true. And I think anyway that any privilege that you have, and as much as you have a privilege is higher your responsibility. I don't look for being. It's not looking for scores like in the school or in the competition.
You have a philanthropy now. You've become philanthropic. You have a foundation. What does your foundation do?
Well, we begin informally, and we create a foundation 25 years ago, and we create another foundation for Telmex in '96, and we have created some foundations for specific issues. What I think can be done is a combination of the economic activities, business and economic activities, and not-profit activities. In the foundations, we work in. We think that the way to move of the society is beginning with the nutrition of the mother pregnant, the attention of health of the mother and the child, and early education and education. That means that we get involved in some way in nutrition, health, in all around health with the national impact, education, culture, sports, environment, research, some kind of social justice in some kind of levels. But we look at not trying to think just to support some institutions, but trying to make a national impact in what we are doing.
What national impact do you want to make?
Well, let's say we are making surgeries around the country for people that need ophthalmology, orthopedy, and reconstruction. We used to begin with 2,000. Now we are doing this year 120,000 surgeries every year.
120,000?
120,000 surgeries. Now we extend that to Peru for 50,000 in 3 years with the Justra and the Clinton Global Initiative in Peru. You are doing, we give in Comodato, we lend to the small health centers of the country, not small, the health centers of the country, equipment for the mother pregnant to check with ultrasound and to have thermal beds for the children and to check some kind of things at the beginning. We are doing another joint venture with the George Washington University looking for vacuums that are very cost efficient, looking for the infections and solutions for
these neglected tropical diseases in many cases.
Yes, many kind of diseases we're focusing into, but it's a very important program and project because when the children and the people have some kind of these diseases, they get very bad in life and they cannot be competitive, they cannot do things.
Do you see a direct connection between disease and development?
Yes, we think that disease and development is very important, but also there are many kinds of disease that are consequence of development, no? Excesses like diabetes or other things of heart and all. You have early diseases and all diseases that are very costly. When you are old, you have a lot of diseases because you live so much and because you are developed, you have the conditions to live a long life expectancy to be bigger. But what we are studying are very important And the equipment we gave for these health centers, like 2,500 equipments, are also to the origin of life, or to take care of the child when it borns. If they don't take care of him, he has hypoxia because he has the head, just to avoid hypoxia. And hypoxia will make you handicapped for the future. So you can have a lot of things that are for the beginning and other diseases that are at the end. And also at the beginning, you try, and that's what we are doing in this program, to decrease mortality of children and mothers. Yesterday, the minister was telling about the mortality in the Emirates, that is one of the lowest of the world. It's, I don't know the average, but maybe it's near the double of what they have. And that's one of the, because not only is to take down the disease, but also the mortality.
So you mentioned working with GW. I know you're working with Dr. Peter Hotez is working with your organization. What are you looking for? What breakthrough, what single breakthrough would you most like to see from some of this work?
I was telling that we have a foundation, no? We have the foundation that has my name, the foundation of Telmex. We work in many programs. I will talk in cultural. We have a collection of art for people that cannot travel, and we are building a museum, and etc. In sports, we have the Guinness record. We have a tournament of 14,000 teams every year, 14,000. We are another program of a football tournament for boys of the streets, niños de la calle, I don't know how you call them.
Yes.
And this health issue, what we have done is the Institute of Health. We gave a donation to the Institute beyond the foundation to have a more active and executive activity with this focus of health. That's what we are doing with the George Washington, to make also research there and to finance many activities and make joint ventures with different foundations from outside or inside, looking for the health, to improvement of the health and get down the mortality in Mexico and also in Mesoamerica now and later in South America.
Carlos Slim, you have an incredible sort of personal story and business story, and now you're into this philanthropy. If there were, and I know I mentioned this to you earlier, and you said, maybe you don't want to ask me that question, but I do. If there were one problem in the world that you could fix, what would that be?
I think poverty. Poverty. I think poverty in the past was a problem of social justice, was an ethical problem. Today it's an economic need. The best thing should be done is fight poverty. The best investment, the best everything. And poverty, you fight it with health, education, and work, only with labor, with jobs. You cannot solve only by social programs or jobless payments, because you go against dignity and autoestima, how you say?
Self-esteem.
Self-esteem, and it's not sustainable. I think it should be fight poverty. They used to say that the last war was fight with the Second World. No, they finished in the Second World. I think there should be this driving these changes are very important, and to make the private sector to be more efficient. And it can be a third war against poverty. Instead of buying military uniforms, dressing, housing, education, health, and create, it's very interesting because it's clear that we're living in a new society, a new civilization. Actually, the Toffler are celebrating 40 years that they write the book Future Shock, 40 years. And we don't, well, they don't learn yet, but and this new societies of services. And what should be done is a kind of reconversion, labor reconversion. People will not be more blue collars, now they will be white collars. People will not be working in that on the other, they need to be work. And that is important is that US be clear which are the new activities and where will be the labor, which is the need of labor, and develop more and train more the people, and the university can do that job for the new society. Let's say to develop more activity in IT, information technology, information and communication. In U.S., it's already happening. Most of the people is out of the industry.
Right.
But the problem is that you are out of the industry, but you are importing all the goods that you need, and you are importing it, changing goods for assets.
It's a problem. In the 90s, back in 1997, I think it was, you nearly died. You had a very serious medical situation.
The doctors made it serious. No, no.
Well, we're glad you're
I went for a regular surgery.
Right, what happened?
6 years before I changed my valve, aortic. They put me aortic valve.
Right.
And then I have a aneurysm, they say, and they were going me to change. And when they make the change, I have a big hemorrhage.
How did that change your life?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Do you think it did?
No.
Well, do you consider yourself a lucky man?
I don't believe too much in lucky. I believe in circumstances. I believe in work. I believe in do this, in create your circumstances and create your luck. And because the most important thing in life is family, love, friends, and that's not luck.
How do you want to be remembered?
I will be in the other life. I don't take care about that.
All right, let me try it. Let me try it this way. Warren Buffett and Bill Gates say people, very wealthy, successful people, should give away half their wealth to charity. What do you make of that?
Well, if you have money, it's different. If you have business, I think that's interesting idea. It's a good intention. But I think giving away a part of what you give is nothing. It's not important. I think I prefer Bill Gates creating Microsoft and Steve Jobs doing Apple and all this, that giving half of his money will not solve any problem to anyone.
Will not solve problems.
No, you are talking about how much? 200 million, 300, 500 million, 400 million, billion dollars.
$1 billion. $1
billion.
It's a lot of money.
No, because they will make it tax deductible, pay 5% every year, because they will not give already for some projects. They will give the money and they will use 5% of this money every year. That means that they will put, if they collect 300 billion, they will use 15 billion a year. $15 billion a year will solve any problems. I think you can solve more the problems when you focus in some target and you put all the resources you need for the problem. I don't know if I explained. Not to have the money and look what to do. Is to have the challenge and put the money and the effort that is necessary.
But that's the purpose of the focus, right? Isn't that the
No, I think the important thing is not to put the money, but to put your effort, to put your experience, to put your talent, to put... businessman, we used to manage resources, human resources and material resources, and to have some leadership in our activities that we are doing. What we need to do is to have these targets and this challenge and use the resources that are necessary and not to put a size to the support, not to say 50%. And if it's 55, what do you do? But also, many of the challenges you have should be solved by the investment and business activity you develop. I don't know if I explained.
Yes.
Let's say, what we are doing, we are creating in the business activity some companies, different companies with the time. Now we are doing a company for infrastructure and construction. And we are investing in all the infrastructure that the public sector want private sector to develop. We bid for that. Every time that there is something, we bid. And you need to do that. That's it can be with a business focus. And you can have other things without the business focus that I was telling about health and education. But also in health, let's say, you should be involved in vacuums. You need to develop it commercially. And you need to invest in the factory and the laboratories. And you need to do philanthropic or without profitability or with profitability, but you need to put both in your focus. And you need to open your activity.
So you're trying to do that, you're trying to do both.
That's my challenge in life, is to change our country, to help to change. I am not so to believe that I can do that, but to try to make all the effort you can do to move this challenge.
Bring philanthropy and business together to
Yes,
focus
let's
on
say,
that.
what is one of the things that we need in our world? We need a infrastructure all around. Which is the most important? Telecommunications, because it's this nervous system of the new society.
Right.
What makes a big difference is that you used to move at the speed of the horse and the speed of the sail, and now you move at the speed of the sound and the speed of the light.
And the speed of the iPad and the
Yeah, the light is the
That's-
light. Is the light. It's 300,000
I-
kilometers
before-
per second. That's what we need in our countries. We need infrastructure, telecommunications. We need education, but not by charity. Charity don't solve poverty. How many charity has been done in the last 50 years? Trillions of dollars, not 15 billion a year, or not 100 billion.
Charity may not solve poverty, but can charity or can philanthropy fund research, for example, that can come up with that vaccine that you're talking about?
No, you need to have people working on that, and someone at the end of the day that look it like a laboratory to the production, universities and money not profitable, but also profitable, because you need to do that
Bring it all together.
to bring it to the market.
Let me add, before we run out of time, I want to ask you some questions from the audience, okay? Since you're telecommunications business leader, how do you think the new emphasis on social networking through platforms like Facebook and Twitter will affect the telecommunications industry?
Will affect?
Will affect-
They are they use the telecommunications industry. What should be understood is that in telecommunications, there is not only the telephone companies or the telecom companies. They are the government, like regulator, the suppliers of equipment that they are the ones that work a lot in the technology. Like I was telling Lucent, you have the Chinese and Ericsson and other, and Siemens, the producers of the handsets, and mainly the customers. And I was telling that it's very important the corporations. And what we do is we have already in Latin America near 95% penetration of mobile. Mm-hmm. The same that US and higher than Canada in Latin America. But now what we need is to have universal access for broadband, mobile or fixed, but also applications and content. And what you are talking about are applications. All of us need to be together. And that's the other group sector that get in this business and in this activity, that is the developers of content and applications.
How do you think here's another question from somebody in the audience. How do you think the aging of the American population will affect the global economy?
What I was telling, when we were agricultural society, people begin to work at 6 or 8 years in the rural areas. I don't know as much as they can walk, and they live 40 years, 45 years. Then the industrial society, they begin to work at 16 or 18 years, and they retire at 60 or 65, or I don't know, because they pass away at 55, 60, or 65. Now that you are living to 90 years or more, because today is 85, but in 10 years can be 90 years or 95. Now it's 85. You need to retire at 75. You cannot retire at 60 or 53 or 62.
Carlos Slim to the world retire at 70, 75.
I am 70 already. So I will not retire yet.
Well, we'd all like to be like you.
No, I think people at 70 or 70 are in his best. In the past, you were walking and with a lot of problems. Now, at 70 years, you are at your best.
Let me come to the other end.
That means that the aging of the U.S. society, as much as they don't retire at so early, they will make a lot of rotations with the experience and the talent they have.
Let me come to the other end of the spectrum for my last question, very brief because we're almost out of time, but I must ask this because of who we are, the university, and who we work with, which is the young people. What is Carlos Slim's advice to young people based on your experience in the world and what you see ahead? What do you say to young people?
I have a letter for the young people. I will give it to you later. Well, I advise that they look how to live, that the most important thing is not necessarily professional success, but personal life, that they take care about personal life, about his family, his friends, his life, his personal life, that the happiness is inside, is not, and the success is inside, is not from outside. Recognition of success is not a competence, like you say, because Forbes, or I don't know who say something, you are or no are not success, no? I think that's very important, and that they work in what they love, what they like, and that they get involved in work because it's an emotional need, and they don't limit themselves in what they are doing, and that they have the autoconfianza, you have to say?
Self-esteem.
Self-esteem to believe in themselves and that they can do any challenge they can put in front.
You're an optimist. I think you're an optimist.
I think pessimism is mediocrity.
Pessimism is mediocrity. I like that. That's very good. We'll end on that note. Carlos Slim, thank you so very much.
Thank you.